Polly with Get Busy Thriving. In this video I want to share with you, this is my day timer, and it says on there RPM, and I picked this up years ago after doing a video series with Tony Robbins called RPM. It's called the Rapid Planning Method. And a lot of people, the purpose of this video is to help you if you struggle, myself as a solopreneur, coach, consultant, you work for yourself. And I've done business consulting for a lot of years, and I used to teach startup businesses and startup entrepreneurs how to get their business started. And one of the things that a lot of them run into is like all this overwhelm, like too many things to do, so much going on. And what I find is I was a project manager for many years, so being very deliberate in driving projects to completion is one thing, and managing something not minor, but like one individual thing versus running a business, right? And your life, let alone adding children and family and contribution, philanthropy, volunteer time, all these many things that we have in our life. And when I found Tony Robbins' method, or how he kind of explains how to do it, along with other programs that I've studied, it turns it from time management to priority management. It's how I like to look at it, because people get really bogged down in the day-to-day things. They use their email inbox as like their priorities, like their life is just more of the same. And if you want to achieve a lot in your life, if you want to get out of overwhelm and get into productivity and really accomplish the things that matter most to you, there's a totally different way of looking at things. So my goal with this video is to show you a little bit of my day timer, that's what we call it, or that's what I call it, and my thought process, and what I do each week, each month, each quarter, each year to drive my life to big goals, to complete the things that are important to me, not just what's coming at me each day. Because prior to this and learning this method, it was like whatever was in the inbox, whatever was coming, I'd look out maybe a few weeks in advance. But if you want to drive big projects, big goals, achieve things that take months and months or years to complete, you got to look at it differently, right? So let's get started. So the first thing that's important is you start with the big stuff first, right? If you've ever heard that analogy, or if you've ever done a little exercise of putting your rocks in a jar and then smaller rocks in sand, I'll describe it to you briefly because some of you maybe don't know this, but if you take a jar and you've got some big chunk rocks, you've got some medium-sized rocks, you've got some small rocks, and then you've got all this sand. And if we tried to put that all into the same jar, if we put the sand in and then the little rocks and it wouldn't all fit. The jar isn't big enough. But if I take my big rocks and I put my big rocks in first, and then I take my medium-sized rocks and they fill in the smaller spaces, and then I take my small rocks and then they fill in smaller, and then sand fills in all of it. And it's amazing what you can get into the cylinders, like an analogy for your life or your time in your 24-hour day, what you can fit in when you get your big rocks in first. And that's what's behind this method. So that's the concept anyway, is you make sure you prioritize your big rocks. You know what's most important to you. That comes through a values exercise. If you haven't done that, I've done a video on values and how you create that. But understanding what your priorities are, okay? So that's most important to starting any of this. So in Tony's, in this guide, so at the very beginning, he has what he calls my life plan, right? And it's like, what's my vision for my life? What's my purpose? What am I up to? What's my identity, my code of conduct, my values, my rules. So I already know my top value is health and vitality. Number 2 is love. Number 3 is contribution. 4 is fun and play, and on and on and on through my top 10. So I see those, and then I get into what we call categories, and then your calendar. So from there, once you really have a clear vision of what's important to you in life, where do what do you want most, and what do you want to show up as in the world? Are you most important at this phase of your life in growing your career, or studying, or raising a family, or building a business, something like that? So you get clear about that, those bigger goals, the bigger priorities about who you are in the world, and then you break it down. So then you start with your 1-year goal. So you say, okay, in this year, well, you don't have to see the sheet, but in this year, these are the things. So looking at those values, these are the things that I want. And you can have it maybe structured with my 5-year goals or my 3-year goals. Sometimes I think 5-year goals are a little too far out for us, unless there's something that clearly has 5 steps to it, or 5 years worth of completing like a degree or something like that. But usually it's like 1 to 3 years we have a pretty good idea of a horizon. After that, especially running your own business, like trying to plan for 5 years, no way. 3 years, maybe. Business has changed so fast. Definitely 12 to 24 months is important. So once you identify, okay, let's say I start out with my first year, what do I want my goals to be for, this year? So I write those all out, and then it's about chunking it down into, what do I want to achieve in each quarter? Okay, so you identify, okay, these are my list of, say, 10, 20, 30, maybe it's just one really big goal that you have for the year, but there's a lot of mini steps to it, okay? So you decide, what is your priority for the year? These are the things that I want to do in all areas of your life. And there's a whole nother exercise you can do about the wheel of life and prioritizing what you want to most focus on that year. Some of us, we got to get our health back in line. Some of us, biggest priority is career. Some of us, it's family, rebuilding relationships, or starting a relationship, right? Or in transition between them. Some of us, you want to introduce more volunteer time, get more balance, things like that. So, or more play, right? So you look at your wheel of life to identify what areas of life are most important to me. What do I want to focus on? What do I want to grow? What would be most fulfilling and enhancing? From that, you get your 1-year goals. And once you have those, you say, okay, what can I achieve, or what do I need to be most focusing on each quarter? And some of those may have like daily, so like your health and vitality, that's a daily ritual that you will introduce. Some of these you may not even start for 6 months, right? So you may have something that you want to tackle in the first quarter or the immediate quarter that you are in, and something you say, I got to focus on this now. These other things that I want, I'll put them out, 6 months, and I'll start them. But I want to finish them in 6 months, in 12 months. And then the other thing is like maybe something is very specific to that season, like a vacation. You want to take a vacation a certain time of year, or a family reunion, or there's a workshop that you want to go to, and it's only in that particular month. So that's how you identify it. And then so we're going kind of global. What are your big visions? Then we go down to your annual, and then quarterly, and then you divide it into months. And what's nice about, and so that's all in here. And then what's nice is once you identify your quarterly, then you can start to break those out into, when am I working on those things in what month, right? So for example, this was January. So in January, I had this list of things that were that I'd identified as these are priorities for that month. And then, when you get to February, so you might, from your quarterly, like I said, maybe have a workshop or a family reunion or vacation or something like that, you put it into the month's page or the month's priority. So it's like, preparation for taxes I had in February. It's like doing my tax prep was a priority for me in February. I had an event that I went to in February. And so you might have an event later in the year, but maybe you do the planning for it, or you do the ordering the tickets for it, or something like that. So what's going on related to those high-level goals in that month? And then that goes onto this sheet. And I don't have every sheet for every month filled out, because things will arrive during the year. You'll have new things appear that will become priorities. But standing wherever you are, what can you identify out into the future? So I did that each month. And then from those monthly goals, and you can break those down, and then you start to say, okay, well, of these, which can I prioritize? And you don't do every month at the same time. I'm saying when you get down to that month, then, so let's say it's the beginning of a new month for you, or it's the last week of a previous month, and you look at the month ahead. These are the things, and you think about, okay, is there anything new, anything else that is a new priority, or something else that's come up, or a new project, or something I need to be paying attention to. So you add that to the list that you were aware of when you started your planning. So you have a better vision of all of the things that you want to do in that particular month. Then as best you can, you start to identify and chunk those down into the weeks. So you say, okay, well, this one, these are more of a priority, or maybe they supersede the next item. So maybe one has to be done in the first week, one has to be done in the second, the third, or the fourth, or maybe you do it the beginning of the month and the end of the month, something like that. So you can start to see what do you need to chunk out and identify in those weeks. And then it gets down to the weekly level. And this is more of the day-to-day, I would say, or the week-to-week, but something that you do ongoing. So every Sunday I sit down and I look at my month view, and I say, okay, what is on my month? Where am I in that? Does anything need to move around? And then as I come into that particular day, so Again, as I said, on Sundays I do this each week. So I have, and you can get faster at this. I think the first time, the annual takes like a half a day. And some people it takes a whole day to like really get clear on your visions and your goals and things. But then when you get down to the week to week, you can get this down 30 minutes minimum, probably an hour and a half you'd want to set aside. So on that Sunday, so I list, okay, so let's say this is the first time you're doing it. You say, okay, what are my outcomes for this week? Between this Sunday and next Sunday, what do I want to be focusing on? What do I want to be prioritizing based on my bigger goals, those important things? Because there's a lot of little things that will bubble up during the week, but what am I bringing from my high level goals into that week, my bigger rocks that I want to be prioritizing? Some of them may be a daily activity, some of it may be just like one thing that you need to complete, something may need to happen in order for something else to happen, whatever it is. So I think about, what am I working on this month, what's going on just day to day, and as I'm looking into this week, what are priorities, have new things arrived? So on this Sunday sheet, I write, okay, what are my top outcomes? What are my priorities for this week? If this was a week, as I'm continuing this, what I actually do is I start with, what were my accomplishments from last week? One of the greatest things to help give you confidence all the time, like I'm kicking ass, like I'm doing, I'm up to great things and I'm achieving those things, starting to see your progress, because that really feeds your animal brain and your soul, I would say too, because we love progress. So I would write here, like, what were my accomplishments from last week? And it could be big or small, right? And it's you acknowledging yourself for, like, wow, look at all those things I got through. All right, I was up to and I completed, or I made progress on anyway. So it's an opportunity to give yourself a nice pat on the back. And then going forward, I say, okay, what are my top outcomes for this week? All right, and then as I look at that, and then I also look at my, so I have my planner, my month view of my planner. So I have each day, and as I'm going, I'm setting up appointments for the month, but I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, and then I have daily pages. So this is like a daily page, and on that day sometimes I just write in that day if something's coming up or a phone number I need to remember or something important. So this is where the rubber starts to hit the road from a daily priority management perspective. So for example, what I see a lot of people, what I used to do, and I learned differently, I think it was from Twitter, yeah, I think it was, is you can have this long list of things to do. And I've managed this before on a computer in a lot of different places, and some people use Evernote or Outlook or however you want to manage it. But what happens is I'm just looking for this one, I actually filled it out. I was going to show it here. Hold on. Let's see if this one can work, because this is how it could work. So what you do is you have these lists of things that you want to get done. So it's like, okay, these are my priorities, and they all look equal. Like, they just look like notes on a page, like, oh, lots of things to do. Then over to the right, I write, how long is each one going to take, right? Like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 hours, whatever it is, right? So you write how much time there is, and then you prioritize them on the left. So this is how much time each of these things is going to take, 1 through 10 or however many are here. Which one of these is a priority, needs to happen first, second, or whatever. And the other thing about this is some of these may be appointments, right? So like, lunch with so-and-so for a business meeting, or a phone call that you have, an appointment, or a doctor's appointment, or whatever. So then what you do is you take your hour by hour sheet, and so you know how much time you need for each of those items. And maybe some of these are like fixed times, like you have a 10 o'clock phone call, or you have to be somewhere at 6 p.m. or something like that. So you put those hard deadlines or appointments, I would say, and an appointment with yourself, i.e. self-care, exercise, taking care of yourself, mental massage, meditation, whatever, those need to go on here too. So it's not just like, oh, these are just my business things or my structured appointments. Structured appointments with yourself also go on here. So you start off with, and it's good to know, some people don't know what it takes them to get ready in the morning, like to get showered and cleaned up or whatever. It kind of surprises them when they start to do this. Like, include that on here so you're seeing, where your time is going. And I encourage you, if you don't have a morning process, make sure you have a morning process in this. And if it pushes your start time up a little bit, it's so well worth it. So see my video on the morning process if you don't have one. So then I put in here each of my time frames, because I know from my to-do list what each thing is going to take. And as I start to look at it and I go, I'm only on item number 4 and it's the whole day. Well, you got to look at that and like either reprioritize or, how am I going to get this done, or change commitments or whatever. But the benefit of knowing how much time each thing's going to take, or how much time you're willing to give it, or you estimate it's going to take, and then literally fitting it in, like 1 hour for this. Like I have time for my email checking, I have time for phone calls, I have drive time on here, going to an appointment, coming back from an appointment. How much is that drive time going to affect the bandwidth of that appointment? It goes from an hour to maybe 2, something like that. So putting it in, all of those items. And then what you may find is there's something Tony Robbins calls net time, no extra time. So those things that, like making phone calls on the road, or you're waiting for an appointment and you get out a quick email or something like that. Like, how are you going to squeeze in these little pieces of sand, things that need to happen, but they're little, right? So it's remembering those bigger priorities. And that's why you start each morning by looking at, or the night before. A lot of people love to do this the night before because it puts your mind at ease. Like, oh, I've got tomorrow figured out. I do that very often, especially when I'm kind of in momentum mode and there's a lot going on, so that I can sleep, clearly. I look at all the things I need to do tomorrow. I figure out how much time each one's going to take. I put it into my planner. I know what time I need to get up. They're going to get done, so I can go to sleep with a clear head, or a clear heart, if you will. So that's the idea behind priority management in a nutshell. So you start each week, Sunday, you review what did I accomplish last week, and part of that review may be looking at what didn't I accomplish? Like, what do I need to carry forward? What didn't get done last week that needs to get done this week? So you bring it forward, have your top outcomes for the week. That builds into your week. You put in all of your appointments that are already pre-scheduled, or that you know about, or appointments with yourself, your exercise, fail me time, rest time, things like that. And then on each day you itemize, okay, what do I need to get done today? How much time is it going to take? And then each night, or in the morning of, no later than that, you're putting in all of your appointments. So like, this is going to get done. Now, I'll give you a bit of advance warning that when I first started doing this, I wasn't as good at estimating things, and I'd fill it like to the brim, basically filling my cup up to the brim. And I learned I need more gaps throughout the day because things come up, and then depending on the nature of your work, this may or not work exactly as described, right? This is very helpful for those of you who have a lot of unstructured time. You don't have a 9-to-5 job, and it's like, oh, you've got all these. I remember having a job where it was like meetings all day. It's like, when do you get your work done? So this isn't for that kind of work. That can also work, but just knowing, when do you have chunks, so you can say no to meetings that maybe you can avoid, or you can submit your report to and not have to be in attendance for. But it's a great way to look ahead and then know what you can commit to, and know what you maybe need to reprioritize or put to a different day. Another piece of advice is, I got this from an organizer, is if you move something on your calendar 3 times, you need to delete it or get it done, because it's not a priority. So if you're something you're like, oh, I'll do that next week, oh, the next, and it keeps getting rescheduled, either do it, like get it done, or remove it. And that's a big pivotal moment for a lot of things, because we keep thinking, oh, I'll just procrastinate that, I'll procrastinate that. Either schedule it when you can do it and then commit to it, but only reschedule it 3 times and then get it done or delete it. So I hope that helps. And any comments or questions, please let me know. Cheers.